The autumn of 1914. The Ottoman Empire was forced to make a decision. Europe was burning, the great powers were at each other's throats, and which side the Ottomans would stand on was not yet clear. That decision was made, and that decision brought the end of the empire. Think about it. The Ottoman Empire at that moment still governed one of the largest territories on earth. Anatolia, the Middle East, parts of North Africa, the remnants of the Balkans, lands across 3 continents. But the interior of those lands had rotted. The economy was at the point of bankruptcy. The army was worn down. The political structure was dissolving, and powers with hungry eyes had been waiting for every opportunity. The First World War appeared to the Ottomans as both an opportunity and a trap. In the end, it proved to be a trap. Today we tell the story of where the Ottomans went wrong inside that war, which decisions led to catastrophe, and how a massive empire fell apart. This is Dark Past Stories TV, the history they never told you. First, we need to understand, in what condition did the Ottomans enter the war? The 19th century had been a century of running from disaster to disaster for the Ottomans. The Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878, massive territorial losses. Most of Rumelia was lost. Hundreds of thousands of Muslims were forced to migrate. The Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913, another great devastation. The Ottomans lost almost all of their European territories, including Thessaloniki, and the wave of refugees from those lands flooded into Anatolia. The economy was in ruins. Foreign debts had reached staggering proportions. The Duyun-u Umumiye, the Public Debt Administration, had been established to manage Ottoman foreign debts. Foreign creditors had seized control of large portions of Ottoman revenues. The army was being modernized, but there was no money. A German military mission was providing training. Weapons were outdated. Logistics were weak. And the political structure? The Committee of Union and Progress was in power. Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha, Jamal Pasha. This trio, known as the Three Pashas, held the fate of the empire in their hands. Enver Pasha was particularly significant, young, ambitious, an admirer of Germany, and most importantly, someone who blindly believed they would win the war. The summer of 1914, the war had begun. Which side would the Ottomans choose? Relations with Britain were strained but historical. Russia was the Ottomans' greatest enemy. They had been fighting for centuries. Relations with France were complicated. Germany was different. German officers were training the Ottoman army. Strong military ties existed between the two countries, and Germany appeared to be winning the war. The Unionists signed a secret alliance agreement with Germany. August 2, 1914. In the early days of the war, but the Ottomans did not immediately enter the war. They pursued a wait-and-see policy. After all, the empire was exhausted. It did not want to fight. Then in October 1914, an incident occurred. 2 German warships the Ottomans had purchased, the Goeben and the Breslau, were about to be seized by the British. These ships passed into the Black Sea under the Ottoman flag and bombarded Russian port cities. Whose decision was this move? Contested, but in all likelihood it was a joint plan between German Admiral Suchan and Enver Pasha, a provocation designed to drag the Ottomans into the war. It worked. Russia, Britain, and France declared war on the Ottomans. The Ottomans were now inside the war, unwillingly, unprepared, but inside. The beginning of 1915. Britain and France had prepared a major plan. Pass through the Dardanelles Strait, take Istanbul, knock the Ottomans out of the war, open a sea route to assist Russia. In February 1915, the Anglo-French fleet entered the strait. What did the Ottomans have? A weak defensive line, worn-down soldiers, limited ammunition. But they had 2 important advantages: geography and determination. The hills on both sides of the strait formed a natural defensive fortress, and the Ottoman soldier was ready to fight to the death. March 18, 1915, The Anglo-French fleet launched its great assault, but the mines laid by the Ottomans tore through the fleet. 3 large warships sank. 2 more were heavily damaged. The British withdrew. But what is not known even today, by that evening the Ottomans' ammunition was almost completely exhausted. If the British had continued for just 1 more day, the strait would most likely have fallen. The British withdrew without knowing this. In April, the land campaign began. Gallipoli. And here, a resistance rarely seen in history took place. Mustafa Kemal. Still a young colonel at the time, he commanded the 57th Regiment. The order he gave his soldiers has been recorded in history. "I am not ordering you to attack. I am ordering you to die. In the time that passes until we die, other troops and commanders can come forward to take our places." Gallipoli lasted 8 months. The British, the Anzacs, the French, all were forced to withdraw. The Ottomans held the Dardanelles, but this victory came at an enormous price. 250,000 Ottoman soldiers lost their lives or were wounded. No reserves remained, and the war would last for years more. While a defensive war was being fought at Gallipoli, Enver Pasha was planning a great offensive in the east, the Sarikamish operation. December 1914 through January 1915. The plan was simple, in theory. Encircle the Russian forces, conquer the Caucasus, extend towards Central Asia. The great pan-Turkic dream. But reality was something else entirely. Enver Pasha launched a major offensive in the middle of winter, in freezing cold, across mountainous terrain. The soldiers were wearing summer uniforms. There was no logistics. Supply lines had collapsed. The result was catastrophic. Of the 90,000-strong Third Army, only 18,000 remained. The rest fell not to Russian bullets, but to frost and starvation. This was one of the greatest military disasters in Ottoman history. And rather than accepting this disaster, Enver Pasha blamed others. He accused the Armenian population of Anatolia of rebellion. This accusation laid the groundwork for the deportation decisions of 1915, one of the darkest chapters in Ottoman history. The Eastern Front never recovered. The Russians continued to advance. In 1916, Erzurum fell. The year 1916, the Ottoman Empire's longest front, the Middle East, Palestine, Iraq, Syria, the Hejaz, an enormous geography, and there were not enough forces to hold it. In June 1916, the Sharif of Mecca Hussein launched a revolt. With British support, Arab tribes rose up against the Ottomans. Behind this revolt stood the famous British intelligence officer, T.E. Lawrence, the man known as Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence organized the Arab tribes, armed them, and sabotaged Ottoman lines. For the Ottomans, this revolt was an extremely heavy blow, both militarily and psychologically. The Arabs rising up against the Ottoman Sultan, whom Muslims regarded as their caliph, shook the legitimacy foundation of the empire. On the Palestine front, British General Allenby was advancing. Gaza fell and was recaptured twice. In the Third Battle of Gaza, the British broke through decisively. December 1917, Jerusalem fell. 700 years of Ottoman dominion came to an end. Allenby entered the city on foot, saying that surrendered cities are entered on foot, not on horseback. And then Damascus, and Beirut, and Aleppo. The entirety of the Middle East was slipping from Ottoman hands. Alongside the defeats on the fronts, the Ottomans were also dissolving from within. The economy had completely collapsed. Inflation had reached unimaginable proportions. Bread could not be found in Istanbul. In Anatolia, villagers were struggling with starvation. Epidemic diseases were eating through the army from within. Typhus, cholera, dysentery. The number of soldiers falling not to enemy bullets but to disease was staggering. Desertion had increased. Soldiers were fleeing from the front, heading to the mountains, turning to banditry. While the gendarmerie was occupied catching these deserters, the front was weakening. The Unionist administration was becoming increasingly authoritarian. Opposition was silenced. The press was censored. Anti-war voices were imprisoned. The people were exhausted. They did not want to fight, and they could not say so. The beginning of 1918, Germany and its allies were losing the war. On the Western Front, American forces had entered the picture. The Germans were retreating, and the Ottomans had no branch left to hold on to. In September 1918, the Palestine front completely collapsed. The British entered Damascus. Syria was lost. During the same period on the Macedonian front, Bulgaria requested an armistice. The Ottoman connection to Europe was severed. October 1918, the Unionist leaders, Enver, Talat, and Shamal Pashas, fled Istanbul. They left the country in the darkness of night aboard a German submarine. Behind them, they left a burned country, a shattered army, and a people. October 30, 1918, the Armistice of Mudros was signed. The Ottomans were surrendering. The armistice conditions were harsh. The straits would be opened to the Allies. The army would be demobilized. Occupation forces would enter Istanbul. And then the Paris Peace Conference began. Plans to partition the Ottomans were laid on the table. The Treaty of Sèvres. Even Anatolia was to be divided. Why did the Ottomans lose? There is no single answer. But we can say this: choosing the wrong side at the wrong time, entering a multi-front war with an unprepared army, freezing tens of thousands of soldiers in the mountains at Sarikamish, losing the trust of the Arab world, exhausting the people at home, and perhaps most importantly, following a blind ideology. Enver Pasha's pan-Turkic dream was detached from reality, and the empire was spent in pursuit of that dream. But the story did not end here, because while Istanbul was under occupation, a new movement was beginning in Anatolia. Mustafa Kemal, Samsun, and the War of Independence. The Ottoman Empire died, but Turkey was born. This is Dark Past Stories TV, the history they never told you.